Yo, what's going on YouTube? It's Gregulator60 and I hope you're having a fantastic day, simply fantastic. And today we'll be discussing the best competitive Pokemon for you to take in your very next Giraffe League. So if you guys are hyped for this video, please go ahead and show your support, leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new, and I hope you enjoy this battle. Share your comments and thoughts down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think you believe is the best Pokemon for Giraffe League format. I do want to go ahead and let you guys know really quickly why I feel I'm qualified to lead a discussion on this topic. I've been involved in a lot of high-profile and competitive Pokemon Showdown and Wi-Fi leagues, ranging from like the GBAD League, NPL, Hive, P4G, MPL, so I definitely have extensive experience in these Giraffe League formats, and I've taken a lot of different Pokemon, so I have a very well-rounded perspective on the format. In this generation, I've had a lot of good success. I've made multiple finals appearances. I have championships in this generation, and you know, I've seen a lot in my time, in my short time this generation. So definitely looking forward to sharing my thoughts with you guys on what I feel is the best Pokemon in the format. Now I do want to quickly go over my criteria for how I decided to come up with this decision on what I believe the best Pokemon in format is. So my first criteria is that it is the best in Giraffe League at what it does. So its primary set or role on a team, is it the best at what it does? Because if there's another Pokemon that does it better, we gotta replace. How viable are its other sets? If it can run a defensive, an offensive, a mixed attacker role, how good is it at doing everything else other than its first set? What type of counterplay is forced in team prep? Can I force my opponents to prep and respond to my Pokemon in a certain way? And how good is the Pokemon at doing that? Lastly, how expansive is the move pool and the typing, and does it offer my team any support in terms of setting up screens, entry hazards, and stuff like that? That's really important for me. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that there are a couple of other Pokemon, as you can see on the screen, that I did consider. Mons like Zygarde, Lando T, Magearna. All of these Pokemon have a very distinct characteristic about them. They're either the best at what they do, they're a jack of all trades. However, I don't feel that they stack up to the Pokemon I believe is the best in format, mainly because they have their own flaws. But for me, I think the best Pokemon in competitive Giraffe League is Celesteela. Today I want to lead off with why I believe Celesteela is a versatile threat in the format. Now, I want to talk about its best sets, being the annoying defensive tank and the autotomized sweeper set. Now, when looking at Celesteela from a defensive perspective, what you often have to look at is how does it heal itself, how does it stay on the field? And it's accomplished through a few different ways. Being a Steel Flying type means that Celesteela only has two weaknesses, fire and electric. The bulk and raw stats on Celesteela mean that it definitely lives coverage moves. So like Garchomp's Fire Blast, for example, does not 2-hit KO Celesteela unless you have offensive investment or you put on items like Life Orb. This means Celesteela has the opportunity to Leech Seed and retain health via the recovery mechanics. It will Leech Seed, gain an eighth of your opponent's HP, then it protects. That's often a typical standard Celesteela moveset. What makes it difficult is that the 2 turns of 1/8 recovery from Leech Seed means Celesteela stays alive if you don't switch, and if it forces switches and you have entry hazard support for a Pokemon like Celesteela, that means you're continually, a wall is passively wearing down your opponent's team. And that's definitely one thing that your opponents really do not appreciate about dealing with Celesteela, is that they're switching a lot, because you have to think about what Leech Seed does. The only type of Pokemon that are immune to Leech Seed are grass types. And the reason grass types don't like switching into Celesteela is because they have to take moves like Air Slash, they have to take moves like Acrobatics or Fly. So they're very vulnerable to Celesteela. It also has fire coverage, so if they're 4 times weak to fire, you know, they have to worry about Fire Blast, Flamethrower, Flame Charge. That means Celesteela is incredibly difficult, and your opponent really has no responses to Leech Seed bar like Clefable. Actually, Clefable doesn't even count because it's a fairy type. Magic Guard users are wanted to mention in particular. And this counterplay is really limited, and that's what makes Celesteela very difficult and one of the best defensive tanks. Your opponents have very limited ways to effectively and efficiently take out Celesteela, and that's through fire and electric type stab coverage. Now, some of the ways to get around that include choice lock items, choice Pokemon. So this is another way of Celesteela forcing distinct counterplay. if you have, like, for example, a Choice Bandit Chronoth that is locked into Crab Hammer, you can go into a dragon type like Salamence and set up a Dragon Dance, because Crawdont, you know, without that Choice Band potentially maybe, or Life Orb, you know, it's going to take a lot of damage, and you know, you're wearing things down. Now granted, wall breakers do a great job, but some wall breakers aren't strong enough to take out Celesteela. That's how fat this thing is, and it clicks Leech Seed, Recovery. That's why I'm saying Band and Specs items are the best way to deal with Celesteela, because its raw bulk allows it to live those type of hits. Now, and that provides different windows of opportunity for your other teammates. Like I mentioned, Dragon Dance Salamence, Dragon Dance Sweepers, Calm Mind Sweeper, Pokemon that can take advantage of fire and electric type coverage really benefit. Think of mons like Zygarde, Landorus Therian that you know, could force that type of coverage that way, or find windows of opportunity through Celesteela's force counterplay. Now we'll talk about the Autotomized Sweeper set from an offensive point of view. What Celesteela does really well is its access to a fantastic move pool. You look at the coverage options of like Fire Blast, Rock Slide, or not Rock Slide, excuse me, rock coverage including Stone Edge, Earthquake, Flamethrower, Flash Cannon, Energy Ball. Like, there's so many options besides like your dual stab, and your dual stab is good on both the physical and the special side. That's a characteristic that's very rare among setup sweepers that have access to both a usable attack move pool and a usable special attack move pool, and I think that's one of the key defining characteristics that separates Celesteela from a mon like Lando T. Now, Lando T, although it has a special set, it's not as good as the you know, it doesn't have access to that strong flying type set bar Fly. Celesteela has Air Slash at least, so, and it's a little bit less predictable in terms of being able to sweep. Being a Steel Flying type means that it's, like I mentioned, from the defensive point of view, applies also offensively. It's hard to kill, it's hard to nab those KOs, so Celesteela often can live hits to get that Autotomize up. Now, one of the things that I do want to mention about Celesteela that are some flaws with it, there's two things to notice. It's definitely got 4 move slot syndrome as far as a coverage perspective is concerned, and also it's relatively weak offensively. Like, although the bulk is great, it's not amazing. It is amazing, but it's not like purely like, you know, Skarmory level or Blissey level. It's very good. But on offensively, the stats are there. They're usable, they're good, but they're not great. So there are 2 ways to remedy what Celesteela can do. One is Z Crystal access. Making Celesteela your Z Captain opens up the doors immensely in 2 reasons. One, the base power of your moves increase. That means Celesteela can compensate for its relatively slightly above average offensive stats to get a giant nuke off on the opponent. And with the move pool like Celesteela's, you can find the right Z move for almost any sweeper set. It's really easy, and sometimes it's just as simple as running Sky Strike, because flying is a very difficult thing to switch into. Another thing that you have to look at is the ability Beast Boost. Intrinsically, Celesteela is a snowball type sweeper, meaning once it takes a kill, it just automatically boosts from there. That's where Z Crystals come into play. If you throw on a Z move and that nabs a KO, like Air Slash into Sky Strike KOs a Pokemon, it doesn't matter if they switch out, because that Sky Strike is going to hurt a lot of different Pokemon. So that's where that snowball effect comes in, where Celesteela gets 1 kill and they just keep falling, that domino effect, and that's how Celesteela wins games from an offensive point of view, and it's really nice for a Beast Boost sweeper like Celesteela to take advantage of Z Crystals like that. Also, some of the ways to deal with Celesteela, like we mentioned, open up windows of opportunity for its teammates, forcing a lot of predictable coverage. I think it's very easy to see how a team can respond to Celesteela because there's only so many things you can do. And now, let's talk about 4 move slot syndrome. There are a few ways to do that, like bulky water types, for example. Celesteela knows it can't break them that easily. However, because flying is so spammable against a lot of teams, oftentimes offensive Celesteelas can run Metal Sound in order to help achieve 2-hit KOs beyond the initial Z move. Metal Sound's actually a really nice tech move to break down really fat teams and force a lot of switches. So with very reasonable team support as far as entry hazard support goes, and a lot of teams should have entry hazard support, Celesteela becomes such a great asset to a lot of teams that is so in favor of the user that it's borderline broken to deal with because your options are limitless, and really you're only limited by your perspective and your creativity as a builder. I feel like that's the one thing that Celesteela has going against it, is that if you as a player or coach can't see the best set for Celesteela, Celesteela might struggle a little bit, or it might not be the most optimal bring every week. However, if you're willing to, explore matchups, if you were intrigued by the challenge of team building, Celesteela is one of the best Pokemon I can highly recommend drafting. This is a first round, first overall pick type of Pokemon, and the caliber of play that this thing is capable of is amazing, and I am so intrigued and I love this thing to death. And now what we're going to do is that we are going to move forward into a couple of replays that really showcase and highlight Celesteela's potential, and kind of see how some of the distinct flaws or inherent flaws really aren't that big of a deal with Celesteela. So we'll be right back as we move on to the replay portion of this video. Yo guys, and we are back with one of the first of our 3 replays, and this first game is going to be one of my own matches, a showcase from the GBA D-League against my good pal TTM Jolt of the Token Minorities. Make sure you go ahead and check out Jolt. Fantastic player and builder. He actually made the playoffs and was the best team overall in the regular season of the GBA D-League. And this is a match that I wanted to showcase for a couple of reasons, mainly to emphasize how defensive Celesteela can honestly support a team very, very well, be a hindrance and a nuisance for teams that lack super effective stab coverage. As you can see, Jolt decided not to bring his Rotom Heat, which is a fire and electric type with stab, and we'll see how difficult it is to kill Celesteela. Very defensive one. This is a mixed defensive, kind of tends towards a specially defensive Celesteela, meant to take on a blanket defensive role of checking Tornadus T, Scolipede, and Mega Kangaskhan with Rotom Wash and Zygarde for backbone support. So one of the goals of this match that I really want to highlight and showcase for Celesteela are Celesteela's defensive ability to check the King and the Tornadus, being able to wear down Pokemon like Seismitoad, Diancie, and Mew for a late game win condition, being a Swords Dance Sneasel, and also just highlighting how annoying and frustrating it is to be unable to kill a Celesteela. And I think this match does a pretty fantastic job. So what I am going to do is that I am going to go ahead and fast forward to a part of the match where I Dragon Tail in this Mega Kangaskhan, and like I mentioned earlier, the mixed defensive Celesteela is my primary answer to this Mega Kangaskhan. This is a Rocky Helmet Celesteela, so as you can see, we're going to chew this Ice Punch, not that well, but for being a mixed defensive Celesteela, this does a great job. And now, one of the things that come in all the time on Celesteela are bulky waters, and this is great, because right now, the Seismitoad is lured in, we got a poison off on it, we're going to get some damage off on it, and now we're going to have a nice exchange here of entry hazards for a Leech Seed. Now, this is a two-way street, he gets his hazards, which, he's a hazard stack team, that's understandable, but like I mentioned, we are wearing down checks to Sneasel late game. Fast forward, we're going to come back out into our John W, my Celesteela, on this Seismitoad as it switched in on my Rotom Wash. I didn't actually predict the Kangaskhan to switch in, but it's very nice that in case that did happen, it's very well, because Seismitoad can't touch Celesteela, and all I do is get Leech Seed recovery off of that. So as you can see right here, it takes a critical hit to do that much damage to this Mega Kangaskhan, and I didn't anticipate it to be this low, which is why I went for the Toxic over the Leech Seed to get the status off on the King. And now we're going to go ahead and punish Jolt for not killing our Celesteela as we go for the Leech Seed, and I don't recommend doing this because unless you have a very strong wall breaker, you're going to see how difficult. Look at this knockoff. Unable to kill Celesteela, we are able to get chip damage off with Rocky Helmet, Stealth Rock, and now a Toxic plus Leech Seed. This Tornadus T is getting severely worn down. As you can see, it's barely above 25%, and that's going to force him to switch out into the Kangaskhan that he was preserving for a free kill basically later on in the game. So definitely punishing players for not being able to recognize how much of a threat Celesteela is defensively, because right now we're going to get another Toxic off on this Diancie, which, I mean, I was running Metal Sound, that's why I didn't go for a Steel move, and that was for that was a nice tech for Substitute Mega Kangaskhan. But as you can see, that Toxic is actually really huge because it puts this Diancie within range of 2 turns of Toxic, which is important because this is a Trick Room variant of Diancie. So what I can do is that because of the poison that I was able to spread, I was able to avoid that Sac Zygarde. And now we're fast forwarding into another turn where we're seeing the reward of Celesteela's like earlier chip damage being reaped right here, because as you can see, this Torn has been considerably worn down because of Jolt's decision to not kill Celesteela. And as you can see, Rotom Wash's Rocky Helmet, Celesteela putting the team on its back from the grave, and now we can see right here the game plan is fully set up. The Mew has been weakened to Rotom, and the Mew is going to take on my Mega Gallade. I was able to taunt it, and all of this was that Toxic was from Rotom, not Celesteela. But you can see how much status that Celesteela can spread, and being unable to kill it can get a lot of damage and open up windows for mons like a win condition like Sneasel, because as you can see, this knockoff is going to KO the Mew, and you know, we're gonna be left at a very nice range of health, where all of that damage on the Seismitoad was accomplished through Leech Seed and Toxic and Stealth Rock. All of those were set up by Celesteela, bar the rocks. So one thing that I really liked about this match in particular, that let me just summarize, is that Celesteela's ability to check the Kangaskhan and the Scolipede and the Tornadus T was done really well. Jolt was unable to, or he could have been able to break the Celesteela, but he chose to save his wall breaker to break the other walls on my team, and he was punished for it by basically losing a ton of health on his Tornadus, which made Sneasel's job a lot easier to clean up late game. Another thing that Celesteela did very, very well of, wearing defensive checks to the Sneasel as well, being the Seismitoad and being also Diancie. Those mons were walled by my Sneasel because I had low kick. I didn't have any ice coverage to hit that thing, so it was very important for that to be done, and also it just highlights how difficult and annoying Celesteela is to kill. So yeah, definitely one of the best matches that I could find to illustrate how annoying and just, oh, how frustrating it must be to be on the receiving end of a Celesteela. So yeah, definitely a nice highlight of a match right there for a defensive Celesteela. Now we'll move on to an offensive variant of Celesteela. And we are back with replay number 2 of showcasing offensive variants of Celesteela. As you can see, this is not a replay by me, but of my boy John W, John 2003. He's like my little brother in Giraffely. He helps me a lot build with my Celesteela, and I really wanted to highlight this variant of Celesteela. Like I talked about in the main course of this video, there is the nice tech of Metal Sound, which helps Celesteela overcome one of its main flaws, and that's its access to low base power moves with a relatively not very strong special attack stat. So why is Metal Sound offensive Celesteela very good in this game? As you can see, looking at team preview, King L5 decided to bring Lando, T, Volcarona, Dragalge, Starmie, Diancie, and Ferrothorn. So you might be thinking Autotomized 3 attack Celesteela looks to be like a pretty straightforward set with the addition of Flamethrower to help kill the Ferrothorn, but as you can see, L5 does not have a flying resist that resists steel. So ideally in this consideration, or in this matchup, excuse me, the introduction of Metal Sound is actually really nice to help break the fat Pokemon that potentially could live and stall out, mostly in the Starmie and the Ferrothorn as well, because Air Slash is so weak. You really want to give Celesteela any type of advantage. Most people do that through the introduction of a Z move, like you pack on the Flynium Z or some type of other Z crystal to give it that ability to Beast Boost the first time, and then you see that snowball effect that I mentioned earlier. However, we're going to see in this particular match what the offensive Metal Sound does in this case. So as you can see, as you can see in this game, John W is going to lead off with the Blastoise against the Lando T, and he's going to get a nice Dark Pulse off on the Dragalge. And John's going to choose to stay in Dark Pulse. The reason why you really want to break fat Pokemon like Dragalge, Ferrothorn, Starmie is because Celesteela needs to be able to pick up those KOs. However, in this instance, John thought it would just be best to take out the Dragalge while he can. I can understand that. It's a big threat to Raikou. Also annoying for Tangrowth and potentially Piloswine as well. John's going to make a really nice double switch out into the Mega Blastoise here and get off a nice 40% on the Ferrothorn. Now, that 40% may not seem like a lot, but here's what it does right now. John doesn't scout for Thunder Wave Ferrothorn, but I would have. But regardless, he's going to go for the Metal Sound right here. The Autotomize into Metal Sound on this Starmie. Now, this is a big turn right here, because as you can see, that Starmie went for Recover. that Starmie is probably built to take on and avoid the 2-hit KO from offensive Celesteela's Air Slash. That's really important because if you're looking from L5's perspective, Air Slash is probably the best tech that Celesteela can do because no one's going to run Energy Wall or Grass coverage against a team with a Ferrothorn. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But John W. packing the Metal Sound is going to force L5 to switch because now his Starmie is unable to 2-hit KO the Celesteela, and as he probably can imagine, it is a specially offensive Celesteela. And well, what do you know? That the Celesteela is going to come in. That crit kind of sucks for L5, but you know, it's probably going to do about 30%, you know. That's probably a 2-hit KO regardless, but that crit definitely mattered. Definitely didn't matter because, as you can see, the special attack boost is gone, and now we talk about the snowballing effect that an offensive Celesteela provides for a team, because flying is a very difficult thing for teams to switch into, and as you can see, L5 didn't bring a flying resist, and his flying resist lost to Steel, which shows why Metal Sound is a really nice tech on offensive variants of Celesteela, and it's just gonna clean sweep, pick up 6 kills. Or 5 or 6 kills in this game. So John W, the god, manages to beat down a very impressive player in King L5 himself. So definitely a match I wanted to highlight, showing how deadly offensive variants of Celesteela can be. That snowball effect with Beast Boost is definitely one of the scariest things for a lot of draft teams to cover. And if you think that you can wall like a 3-attack speed autonomized set, you got another thing coming, because Metal Sound really patches up a lot of the weaknesses and flaws that offensive variant of Celesteela share. So I hope you guys enjoyed this replay, and we'll move on to our final replay. And we are here with the final third replay, featuring 2 National Pokeball League coaches, Gypsy King, the 3-time champion, probably the undisputed best draft league player we have, versus Razor Wolf of the definitely a match that did not go the way a lot of people thought. Mega Latios, Azumarill on Razor's side, plus the Thundy T resisting the dual stab of Celesteela. This match I wanted to highlight in particular, mainly because it showcases the mixed coverage that Celesteela can often pack on an autonomized set. Now, Gypsy did bring autonomized 3 attacks. I've been talking about that set a lot. However, what I'm not mentioning is the mixed coverage, packing Flamethrower as a tech for the Fortress as a coverage option. Now, one thing to note about Razor's team in particular is that he opted to not bring a Rock Resist. Now, that's a key because Thunderous T resists both Air Slash and Heavy Slam. Flying and Steel type coverage options that the Celesteela could carry. So rock coverage is important. It's not to waste because it's a kind of a no drawback play. Can hit a lot of things on his team, and there's not much to like say that he can't bring it. So that's exactly what we're going to see, is the coverage options really showing off how customizable Celesteela is as an offensive threat when you're building. So that's what we're going to go ahead and lead off with. Gypsy decides to lead off as Mega Diancie. Now, Gypsy typically leads off with his Diancie. It's a great way to prevent Stealth Rock from coming up on the field, or seeing if the Mamoswine is the rocker. However, Razor is going to go onto the Fortress. Once again, no drawback plays, just protect, kind of see and scout what your opponent wants to do. And Razor is going to go for the Gyro Ball, giving Gypsy an opportunity to set up his own Stealth Rock. Now, a lot of times I've been preaching about Celesteela is Entry Hazard. Entry Hazard support is a great way to chip down the opposing side of the field in order to give Celesteela those KOs that it so desperately wants. And because any chip damage is good damage, we're going to see Celesteela come in on a dual entry hazard. That means it's probably packing either Volt Switch and Gyro Ball. We've already seen Gyro Ball, so the last move is either Volt Switch or some type of rapid spin support. But Gypsy uses this as an opportunity to autonomize. We're going to see the coverage come in super clutch. As you can see, Stone Edge is going to KO the Thunderous T. Now, Gypsy could have opted for, this is not a Z Celesteela, so that's important to note, but even without Z Crystals, you know, the entry hazard support plus the coupled with Beast Boost, as you can see, the Flamethrower boosting the attack stat, which is going to allow the Celesteela to get a very nice clean KO on the Mega Latios with the Heavy Slam. That crit did not matter because, like I said, this is a physically offensive Celesteela, and we're just Gypsy just putting on a clinic on mixed variants of Celesteela. The Autotomize, this match really showcases how versatile the coverage options are on a mon like this. And everyone says, you know, coverage is really good on offensive sweepers, but it's important to emphasize, especially on Celesteela, how diverse that coverage is. In all these replays, we've seen Metal Sound, we've seen Heavy Slam, we've seen a lot of different options like Flamethrower, Stone Edge, like we haven't even seen Energy Ball. I know I brought that in the past, but definitely Celesteela making a very strong case to be probably the best Pokemon in the format, and the King himself is showcasing that right here in this replay. So that's about it for our third showcase of Celesteela. Alright guys, that wraps up the replay portion of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I sure as hell had a great time discussing Celesteela, and I can't just recommend how great this thing is. So I hope you enjoyed this battle. Go ahead and leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, if you're brand new, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, share down below what you would like me to cover next time. So it's Gregulator 60 signing off. I hope you have a fantastic day, simply fantastic. Peace out.